What's going on, everybody? Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, brought to you by Inquire Higher, where we give you insight and guidance to successful Black professionals. We talk about their careers, how they got there, and just a little pieces and gems that they can provide to you to, possibly help you for your goals. So my name is Selvin Inquire. I'm one of the co-founders of Inquire Higher, and I appreciate you joining us today. As a friendly reminder, please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and the major streaming services. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Inquire Higher. That's INQUIRE. HIGHER. And then you can also check out our website, inquirehigher.com. We've got a wealth of information just to kind of get you on your path, when it comes to college, personal finance, as well as just general student success. And we're in the midst of college application season, so we specialize in college consulting. If you need any type of help, whether you are just starting the process of kind of looking to get into school, or you're trying to apply, trying to figure out what the best award letter is for you, we definitely got you. So, reach out and we'll be happy to help. So today's episode, I wanted to bring on someone who, when I think about all the students that I've worked with, there's a very small percentage that, want to go into pastoral work, whether it's due to just, basically not a lot of people want to get into it, or maybe they already have a set path. But I definitely wanted to bring in someone who had their own journey, still going through it now. And they're, I would say at the peak of their success as of right now, and really still pushing that ceiling. So this man, he is the pastor of the Condon Street Baptist Church in Providence, Rhode Island. He is the author of Necessary Endings, Some Things Need to Die for You to Live. He's also the host of his own couple of podcasts, Saved and Faithful, as well as Made for Mondays. He's a professor at Providence College, and he's a doctoral student at Boston University to become a doctor in ministry. So how this guy has so much time on his hands, I don't know. But we're going to get into his story, really talk to him, try to figure out, what were the steps that he's taken to get to where he's at now. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to you, Justin Lester. So thanks for joining me today, man.
What's up, man? Happy to be here, man. This is an honor to be here today.
Yeah, no, honored to have you on, and just to really kind of talk about your story. So first, just want to start off, give you the floor to really give yourself an introduction, tell the people kind of, who you are as a person. So I'm going to start with asking, who is Justin Lester?
Yeah, most definitely, man. It's funny. This question is something I've been personally wrestling with, and I'm actually preaching on this in my church in this series about how we rank, how we define ourselves. So it's kind of interesting when you ask this. For me, man, first and foremost, I'm a husband. I'm a husband to Courtney. I'm a dad to Camden, a follower of Jesus. I pastor Condon Street Baptist Church. Like you mentioned, I teach at PC. I love life, and I love figuring things out. And so that's really me, man. I'm a homebody, and so family's first, and I love my beautiful wife, love my little man, and I'm privileged to serve some amazing people, and that's taken me to be connected to a lot of folk and do a lot of things like activism and eventually writing. And so authoring, being an author is something that just kind of happened because I just love sharing my story with people. And then that just birthed into teaching. And nice. So enjoying that and really engaging holistically in Black church and trends. And that's where my doctoral work is focused on in terms of gamifying the local church in terms of sustainable ministry. I believe the local church is probably dying, but yet the global church is growing. And so we have to rethink what church looks like. And we'll get into that later too, but rethink what church looks like. And that's where learning for me has come in, and I'm in love with it. And it's actually, it's really cool because that in and of itself got a lot bigger than I wanted it to get. But I'm enjoying it because we're going to go to Silicon Valley and San Francisco and do some work on how we gamify immigrant churches and see how we can then sustain churches for the long haul. So it's I'm enjoying it. So I'm a curious fellow, and and that's kind of just led to a bunch of things happening.
Nice. Yeah, that definitely, pushes, whatever that, initial end goal was, and you're
Yeah,
now
yeah,
expanding to different spaces and things like that.
yeah,
So I want to start with something simple and something that it was more of a personal question for me,
yeah,
but in terms of the titles that you kind of see when it
yeah,
comes to, folks that are in your position, you see pastor, you see reverend, you see preacher, you see all these different things. And I'm not personally sure what is interchangeable, what actually has, very definite definitions. So
yeah,
could you talk a little bit about, even in relation to you,
yeah,
do you have like the prefix reverence? You're a pastor at
yeah.
this church. Can you go over those differences?
Yeah, totally. So, for me, so each denomination is different. So, and at the Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church, Lutheran Church, things like that, each one has different titles. Most people, when you acknowledge a call in ministry, you're coming into a title like minister, right? Where you're just a minister of the gospel, where you're not ordained. Ordination in each denomination is a little bit different. Some people are ordained to be deacons, whereas some churches you're just voted in as a deacon.
Mhm.
But so you start off as someone who acknowledges a call into ministry, and then from there it could be a minister, an elder, whatever that is. But pretty much it's the next step after the acknowledgement of the call.
Mhm.
Reverend comes after the ordination. So that is your denomination has confirmed whether your theological education, your experience in a church, your think just anything like that. So that's where reverend comes in.
Mhm.
But the church, then your denomination will confirm that. So for me in the Baptist church, I started off as a minister. I moved from minister to reverend, and then eventually to pastor. But you always keep the reverend title. The pastor then
Mhm.
only comes when the particular church. So you could be I'm the senior pastor. You could be a pastor of a particular ministry, pastor of a particular segment of the church or whatnot. But
Mhm.
that's where the titles come in. Elder and deacon and overseer and bishop, those are all denominationally bound and
Mhm.
really based upon each denomination. I'm not a big stickler for titles. I tell my church, I said, don't call me Justin because we're not friends, but you can call me Pastor Justin. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, when we're friends, you can call me Justin, but until then, I'm Pastor Justin to you, and that's just respect,
Yeah.
and just the space we're in, and but like some people will work towards being a bishop, an overseer, an elder, but that's each denominationally bound,
Mhm.
and all of that. The other space that also with even like so theological education, whether it's your bachelor's or your master's in seminary or divinity, is chaplaincy. And
Mhm.
so chaplains, there's certain like CPE testing that they'll do and things like
Mhm.
that, where they can then go and serve in hospitals or in the community, or even in schools. Like the chaplain's offices and religious offices in schools for higher ed too, they can serve there too. So those are the major titles, really denominationally bound. And then
Mhm.
kind of in some denominations, it's you don't need your education. Some denominations you do.
Mhm.
I'm always an advocate for go get it. I don't think I think it's crazy that doctors do so much work and then attorneys do so much work, but then like pastors are just like, the Lord called me. Okay, he called you. And then he even went fasting for 40 days.
Right,
And
right.
so I think it's important that if you're going to pursue it, you pursue it. And that's where for me, I did my bachelor's and master's work. And my mother actually, believe it or not, my mother did not let me seek ordination or preach until I finished my master's degree.
Mm.
She said it was that important. She said, there's no way you're going to get up there and make a mess of what God has called you to do by not making sure you went, took time to learn, to understand, to dive into holistically what God's calling you to do.
Nice.
That's really the piece that goes into it.
Okay. And then is that recognized, when you have those, levels of recognition, is that on a local basis with the church, or is there an overarching association? At least, we can,
Yeah.
just stick with your
Yeah.
denomination. What is that level of recognition? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have local bodies. And so for me, for example, we have our local convention that encompasses all of New England, and then our national convention, our national body that we are affiliated with that does
Hmm.
that. So, like, I can marry in any state because our national body for
Gotcha.
Baptist churches. Whereas I think with my buddy's Methodist, he can only marry in certain states, and you have to get licensed in different states in order to do it. So,
Okay.
but for me, I can, like, my sister got married a couple weeks ago. I was able to perform her marriage ceremony in Illinois and
Hmm.
then come back. So it's just things like that where for our denomination, once you're ordained in one state, you're able to carry over to all the states because of the general body.
Gotcha.
And so, so it carries with you. And then, like, and knock on wood, something crazy happens, your national body is what will revoke your license or revoke your ordination.
Gotcha.
And it's happened, like, heretics and things like that. And that's where you're held accountable to your council of pastors and your local body and then your national body.
Okay. Okay. No, I appreciate the just explaining that
Yeah.
and kind of being enlightened on those, specific pathways that you
Yeah.
have, and then it differs as you kind of look at different denominations.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Let's talk about your journey. So where did it begin? Was there any particular event that kind of got this started? Was it just something that you were intentionally thinking as you were, kind of going through school or even before then?
Mm-hmm.
And then second part to this, what was your initial end goal? I know that you talked about how this has gotten bigger than you thought it
Mm-hmm.
would.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the first goal that you had, once you started that journey?
Yeah. So my parents, I grew up in the church. My parents were both pastors. And so, honestly, we had a really negative time in church my senior year into freshman year of college. And so
Mhm.
when I tell you I was done with the local church, I was done with pastors, I was done with ministry. I just kind of gave up on it, ran from it. I was tired of the local church.
Yeah.
And it just, and so my goal was law school. And so at Marquette, my goal was I connected with people, found out when I worked with the Brewers and the Bucks and all this stuff, man, I was connected with all these people and found out that athletic directors need law degrees. I was like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna get a law degree.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
sports law, Marquette had an amazing sports law program. And so I took that thing, man, and the LSAT hated me. I mean, just LSAT hated me. So then I took a class. I did everything you could, man, and I just could not. I didn't test well at all for the
Yeah.
LSAT. I got into some other schools, but I didn't get into Marquette. And
Yeah.
so the blessing for me was the basketball team there blessed me with a graduate assistant job. And that's where, after like 3 years, like, I would attend church occasionally and all of that. But after 3 years, man, I really sat in on it. I remember it was the head coach of the basketball team, Terry Mitchell, came to me and she said, Justin, um, normally we don't create jobs like this for people who aren't going into coaching, but I know God's hands on your life and I know you're running from whatever God has for you.
Mhm.
So we're going to assist you in doing whatever God needs you to do to finish it. And so, man, they were such a blessing. So for 2 years, I was grad assistant for Marquette, and I kind of just found my footing again. And that's where I honed in on, like, God, what do you need me to do? Where do you need me to go?
Yeah.
And I was able to plant myself in a church there in Milwaukee, where I did some youth ministry work and some young adult work, and just fell in love with ministry all over again.
Yeah.
The ugliness of it and the beauty of it. And my ministry then became honed in on people like me, people who walked away from the church, like people who willingly, like, grew up and just walked away.
Yeah.
And because of that, man, my focus went from law school. And I remember the day I went to go visit some seminary. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to seminary and get a degree, whatever. And I was talking to a professor, and he told me the schools that he went to. He went to
Mhm.
Emory, he went to Princeton, and he went to Vanderbilt. And I was like, why in the world am I going to this seminary I've never heard of, right? If I'm going to be serious. So I said, God, if this is real, I'm going to apply to the top 3 divinity schools. And I applied to Princeton, Harvard, and Vanderbilt,
Mhm.
and Emory. Sorry, so the 4: Princeton, Harvard, Vanderbilt, and Emory. And I got into all of them, and Vanderbilt gave me a full ride.
Wow.
And so I was like, I'm gonna take this risk of faith. Never left Milwaukee before. Went to Vanderbilt, and I'm gonna tell you, man, when I got to Vanderbilt that August, to start the journey, man, I ended up connecting with people that I didn't even know, just like on a whim. I got a job with the basketball team there that paid for, like, housing, so I
Mhm.
hadn't have come on a dime while I was at Vanderbilt. And then God just started opening doors. I was preaching at churches that, I mean, they sat like 3,000-4,000 people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've never
Wow.
seen that many people. Doors were open to start writing, so I started getting published really early. And then all of a sudden, man, I went from being like just in the background in Milwaukee to now I'm published. I'm preaching at these mega churches. I'm, leading a student organization. And then I got connected to my pastor at the time. And then the day I graduated, I got hired on to a mega church to work as their coordinator of member services. And then that just took off. And then the church in Rhode Island called. And so it just really went from like zero. Like I was doing some young adult work here and there. I had left the church. I was tired. And then as soon as I said yes fully to what God was calling me to do, man, the stuff just went a completely different direction and haven't turned back. And so it's been law school was it. Like I was set on becoming a sports law attorney living in Arrowhead. Dead serious. I was going to live in Arrowhead outside of Milwaukee, man. I was going to drive into Milwaukee. My kids were going to go to Marquette. And
nice.
The Lord just took me a totally different direction. And, now we are just, life took off like crazy. In the 3 years at Vanderbilt, I got out in 2 and got hired on, and now we're in Providence. So
that's crazy. It all fell into place, it seems like.
That's it.
And I was thinking, because I was looking kind of at the levels of education that you had. Yeah. And one of the things that stood out, at least, before talking to you today, that it seemed kind of intentional. It seemed like, okay, you were doing, I believe it was PR, and, you had that on the bachelor's and master's level. Yeah. Then you had the work in theology on both levels as well. Yeah. Like, okay, this guy had it figured out. He was like, I know I'm going to be here. I'm going to, take these two things. I'm going to put them together. I'm going to get to this level of education, and it's all going to come through. But in fact, it didn't even come through until grad school for you. That's crazy.
So, I didn't declare the theology major until like the very end. Mm-hmm. And the funniest part about it, man, was I had taken some electives in theology.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the end, like it was like probably the summer of my junior or senior year, Father Massengale was like, Justin, you can just declare a major in theology. Like you said, you're running away from theology. You've taken enough elective courses in theology to have a major in theology.
Yeah.
And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And he was like, no. So that's where I was able to do that and then complete it when I did. And Marquette was able to pay for it, which was a blessing, but complete that as it was a blessing because I had taken so many doggone classes for it that I was able to complete the degree later for a bachelor's in that. And then so I went to school, man, originally for journalism. Because I took this class at Marquette over the summer and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. I got there and realized journalism wasn't for me. So I was like, what PR was, and then the whole sports thing hit. I could do sports, I can do sports law. That's where PR came in, took some law classes. And then, honestly, it all fell into place. And as I look back on it, it seems intentional. When I tell you, man, I was just running around trying to just live my life and sow out oats, man. It just wasn't. I was always interested in researching the meshing of it. Mm-hmm. I just never wanted to admit it because of the trauma I had in the local church.
Yeah.
And so I never wanted to admit a love for it. I never wanted to admit a care for it because I never wanted to end up where I'm at. Like that's the funny part about it. I didn't want to pastor people. I didn't want to attend church. I was just tired of it. And it took some really serious things just kind of shifting to follow through on what God called me to do. And looking back on it, man, I'm grateful because I'm 32 doing things that some pastors at 60 haven't done.
You've got a resume of accomplishment. So it's really, really inspiring to see, and it seems like you're just still pushing. So while you've got the legs on you, so that's awesome. So and I was just about to ask you kind of answered it. Basically, seeing why you kind of stuck with those classes, for the fact that you had taken so many up until senior year, there was just something there that you still kind of held on to outside of all the negative experiences that you had. So, it like I said, came together pretty well. Yeah. So now you're in Rhode Island. You're the pastor of this church. You are the youngest leader of this church to date. And even just looking at the church's history is just very rich in terms of its development from, turbulent times when it was torn down and then rebuilt with, a more focus. And it really kind of just grew from there. what's it like being part of that history and being, being that next person that's following all of the other pastors that have, led this church? So, I mean, what does that feel like to you?
Man, it's amazing to Terry Tippis Williams said, "The eyes of the future looking back at us, praying for us," right? And when I think about how at one point in time, and I was those eyes looking back at the people here, right?
Mhm.
This church, man, there were people like we have a picture when you walk into the church of people in our church who served in World War I,
Mhm.
right? The oldest Black regiment had members like the chaplain for the Rhode Island Black Regiment went to our church, right? And so it's amazing to see like those plaques, to have artifacts, man, from the 1800s, that we have locked up in the church. We
Yeah.
found baptism certificates from 1904 the other day, right? It's a beautiful thing to see, and then also to envision, man, what it looks like to continue to build this thing, right? So our
Mhm.
building's been around since 1868, and it's just now I'm telling you this. Now we're paying a lot for the heat that leaves the building and
Uh-huh.
grants. And don't get me wrong, like it's been a journey, like that in and of itself. But it's amazing to sit there and know that there are people who built this, that seen the building torn down, people
Mhm.
who come back, got together, built it, a community that was surrounding it to ensure that our building's together, our history's there, and an average of like 100 or so churches been closed a week, and so to be around for 201 years is
Mhm.
amazing. And like here in Rhode Island, the average church sees 25 to 50 people. I mean, and you are good, like
Yeah.
25 to 50, and we see well beyond that in our early service. And so
Yeah.
it's just amazing to be a part of something that should have died a long time ago, that now has just a new step of life. So it's an honor to. I always tell them every year on our anniversary, I tell them, it's an honor to be called your pastor,
Mhm.
because you don't really you don't need you don't have to have that person. You guys could have just called somebody who's old and sustained, but you guys really wanted to move beyond where we were to now. We're thinking about buying a new building, so it's
Yeah.
just an honor. It's a leap of faith for them, a leap of faith for us, man. But it's been a great journey, and to know that we have a great cloud of ancestors cheering us on
Yeah.
that literally built a building 170 years ago,
Yeah.
and started it, and we there's a rumor that, and we found more information about it. We did some renovations, so in our basement
Mhm.
used to be an old tunnel, and that was actually where slaves used for the Underground Railroad. and,
Wow.
and so it's things like that we were able to find when we were doing some renovations, and actually found like prayers etched into the walls, and it's really beautiful, right? So
Yeah.
to know we were literally sitting on top of that, and that this is a space where people escape to freedom, and that the
Yeah.
church has been a safe haven for years,
Yeah.
and that it's still here. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's definitely it's deep. It's deep rooted in the literal and figurative
Yeah,
sense. So
man.
that's really awesome to hear. When it comes to, and you've kind of talked about this, with all the things that you have, either intentionally, did in terms of your steps, to where you're at now, to the ones that have just kind of fallen into place,
Hmm.
you know, and maybe even just kind of thinking about it now when it
Hmm.
comes to just the financial aspect
Hmm.
of the work
Hmm.
that you do, and then all the things that you wanted to do when it came to, writing the book,
Hmm.
pursuing your doctorate. Were there any things that you had to kind of put in place financially, or just a mindset that you had to have to make sure that all these things that you want to do really manifested to the point that they are today?
Yeah, man. Jeez, saying no. My dad used to tell me this all the time. He said, "Easy now, hard later. Hard now, easy later."
Mm,
And so I've applied that in a lot of areas of my life, and finance is one of them. So saying no to a lot of fluffy stuff, right?
yeah,
And so when I was in school, just saying no to things, and then and saying yes, like not saying take away experiences, but investing in experiences instead
yeah,
of
yeah,
investing in showing off while living, right? So I said
yeah,
no to a lot of fluffy things, and I spent my money where I had to in terms of experiences. My mom always taught me this principle of 10-10-80. So you tithe 10%, you save 10%, and
mm,
you only use 80%. And then
mhm,
I started saving 20%. So I would save whenever I got paid, I would save 20% of that and only live off really 70% of what I made.
Yeah.
And that way, man, I was able then to always have some money in savings, always have some money to be able to do what I wanted to do. If I wanted to travel, if I wanted to go someplace, and I stopped investing my money in things and started investing in experiences. And
Yeah.
that changed everything, right? And so then because of that, when I was at Marquette, for example, I was then able to do unpaid internships and not take too bad of a hit, right?
Yeah.
So I worked with the Brewers and I worked with the Bucks and I did some stuff online with the Packers and I worked with Marquette's Blue and Gold Fund. And so I was able to do so many things that then what that did is it put me in contact with great leaders. So then I got my contact book evolved, right? And so then, I'm able to sit down and talk with people who are making millions of dollars. Like my mentor right now isn't a pastor. He's the CEO of Hasbro. You know what I mean? But it was like because of a guy I met at a Brewers game 10 years ago that knew him when he was working at Google, and so it's just like all of those combined together. And now my mentor is I'm leading a multi-million-dollar company. And so it's just a beautiful thing. So that's where financially, man, I did that. Then also, as we then got out of school, it was then my wife and I sitting down and creating out like what exactly is important to us that we need to invest our money in, right? So we invested in knowing that in due season we'd be homeowners. We invested in knowing that like when our child was born, we want to make sure that we start saving early for his college experience so that like I had to pay out of pocket for some and take loans out from Marquette, but I didn't have to for Vanderbilt. And so doing that. So like I'm still paying off, like Sally Mae is the worst girlfriend you'll ever have.
Everyone.
So, literally, man, she knows where to find you even if you change your number.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that piece, right? So I don't want my son to have to do that. So we started saving early. So it was knowing when and how to like to have experiences and invest in experiences. But some things, it was just not that I'm leaving, not that I'm wearing hand-me-down clothes and things like that. But if I want to write a book, man, what is that going to look like? If we want to buy a home, what does that look like? Let's look at it. Let's put a timetable to it, and let's proceed forward. And my wife has been really instrumental in doing that too, and even for her too, to ensure, man, that if this is what we're called to do, we're going to do it. And the good news for us is that we're in a position that's not amazing, but we're not looking to make it next week. And it's just a beautiful place to be because we learned to say no and had it was hard then. So it was hard to say no to parties. It was hard to say no to do certain things. Like I used to only go out on Thursdays, and I used to act like I was busy on Fridays, but it was just like I budgeted Thursdays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was one Friday a month I budgeted, but I budgeted Thursdays, and because it was also cheaper. But I budgeted Thursdays, and
keep it in the mindset.
That's it. And it was occasional Fridays, but that mindset carried over where it was having bold boundaries that extended beyond relationships, with bold boundaries that came also to my finances and personal well-being. And taking those now, man, we can, like, one of the things I love doing personally as a hobby is wine. And so I can invest in that, and because I didn't just spend frivolously, I was able to save, invest, make decisions, and not get in more debt to then make something, but able to do it because it's fun. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you point out a few good things. I think you point out the power of networking, knowing that, not knowing that, this person that you interacted with or this person that you knew who knew somebody who would be instrumental to the things that you're doing now, that has so much value. So, we always say, keep your bridges intact, be kind to people, things like those little things, because you never know the value of a relationship now, that it will, what that value will be later on. So, I'm glad that you were able to point that out when it comes to your story. When it came to
I mentioned with that too,
go ahead.
I mentioned that. So the other thing with that for me, man, too, was knowing it was trusting feedback from those people too, right? So one of the hinge points of my life, my pastor passed away in 2016, right after we got married. And so I ended up moving my membership and everything to the church I was working at. And he gave me some hard feedback about who I was and what I was becoming. And I listened and I trusted it. Yeah. And because of that, man, it opened me up to everyone he knew. Right. But it was like, I learned in my life, and even I'm getting to those positions, leaders, man, know leaders, and leaders want to know, are you actually going to listen to the advice we give you? Yeah. Right. And so when I listened to that, man, I didn't know he was connected to, like, he used to be like, so like this whole tech piece I told you it took off. My pastor sold something that he started to Yahoo. I never knew that. Right. Yeah. It was just a personal thing he did after college. he had sold something for millions of dollars to Yahoo. I never knew it. So when I told him, like, hey, man, I'm doing this gamifying thing, all of a sudden, like, oh, no worries, man. I'll email 4 people and send you their phone number of people I didn't even know. So now my little dissertation moved from like being a little dissertation to something that really could change the future of churches, because my pastor knows that if I connect you to these people, you will mess up my reputation. And so that was a huge point for me. And that's something, like, even for me, when I talk to people now, man, that's, if I know you're going to listen to feedback, I will trust you with my phone book. And that in and of itself is a huge place too. So.
Yeah. And it can be hard to be able to listen, you know, especially if it's something that you don't want to hear, something that you might be denying.
Listen.
And, you know, once you take that step back and really kind of humble yourself, that can pay off. And it sounds like it really did for you. You pointed out discipline when it came to the money. We actually just posted an image that said, you know, save 20, spend 80. So it's good to hear that it really started early on, and that you were able to not only just apply that to money, but just to apply that to other things. I think, you know, investing in experience, I think that's a very millennial thing. So I would definitely say that, but that's not to say that it doesn't apply to other generations, you know, when it comes to, you know, comparing the material things to the things that you can actually experience, and things that, you know, folks can't take away from you. You know, I always say that about education, you know, like no matter what position you're in, nobody can take what you've learned, your education, from you. So same thing would go with those experiences. And then the other thing was, you basically kind of started from the end point and moved backwards. Like, this is where we want to go. This is what it looks like. And how do we get to that point? So, super solid advice when it comes to that. And especially, and, you know, I don't think that's really pertaining to the work that you do, but just you reaching whatever goals that you wanted. And so, you know, with all of the ambitious things that you have done and want to do, you're able to do those because of those principles that you kind of set in place. Absolutely. Awesome. So now, before we kind of wrap up, you know, like I said, and you've really been highlighting, you have a lot of things that you got going on. You're teaching, you're leading a church, you're working on your own education, you know, you've got your beautiful family and everything. What do you do, or, you know, what type of support do you get when it comes to just keeping yourself together, just so that you're able to do all of these things? I think to really highlight the mental capacity that one has to have to, you know, be able to, you know, reach out and do all these really cool things. It can take a toll on you, and burnout is real. So what types of things do you do to kind of keep yourself in place to make sure that everybody else is doing okay?
My therapist is amazing. I'll be 100% honest with that. I have a t-shirt called Jesus that says Jesus in Therapy. Therapy for me, man, is essential. And I've been in it since. It's crazy. So when I was at Marquette, I was afraid to go to it because the building it was in was across the street from where I worked. And I didn't want anyone, even though there's like 50 other things in there, I didn't want anyone to see me going in there, because they would just assume I was like crazy. Judge people in therapy, man, until when I failed the LSAT and I didn't want to tell my mom, that was one of the lowest moments of my life. And I couldn't live like that any longer, man. And so I started going to therapy, and I have a therapist I see, and we work through certain things and all of that. So that's one thing for me too. I keep a lot of the things that I do very focused. So like all of my research, what I teach, even what I preach on, how we do ministry, is very focused on the same like 4 things. I'm really good at like 3 things. I'm not good at a lot of other stuff, but I'm good at like 3 things, right? And so that's one point. So like you could ask me about finances, and like I can tell you like what I do with it, but my wife does it in her home now, right? So it's just like that's off my plate. Certain other things like are off my plate. So that's one thing. So I practice a lot of minimalism and essentialism. So it's just like very to the point. This is my research interest, and that's the same thing I teach, the same thing I preach, the same thing I lead, all of that. So my therapist, man, being really essential, and then also, man, the right relationships. I maintain my circle, and because of my circle, man, we are very similar people in terms of like meditation.
Yeah.
Very similar people in terms of like what we practice, in terms of like even yoga, in terms of physical fitness, things like that. That really that helps me stay in a routine because my relationships and the pace that I'm on, I surround myself with the people in very similar spaces. And so the only time it really gets overwhelmed is when I don't get a chance to take a break. Corona did that to me. And it was terrible because once I need the separation of space. And so I didn't go like crazy, but I was overwhelmed. I'll be honest with you. The month of July was terrible. I was overwhelmed because like church was at home, school was at home. I was writing syllabus. I was working my dissertation. I was doing stuff for school. I was working on stuff for the school I teach at. My church was all online, but then it started growing. So then like, can you touch people, but you can't touch people. We got to baptize people. I mean, and then I had to fire somebody, then bring on someone. It was just all of this stuff, man. And I told my team, I said, you know what? I need a month off. And I just literally unplugged for a month. And I feel when I finally plugged back in, I was finally clear-headed, can make this. So I believe the last thing in terms of maintaining my well-being, man, rest is a value. Like I value rest. I value 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And I know when I can work, when I can't work. I value naps and I value my off day, which is Monday, and I'm unavailable. Like my church knows it. Like unless somebody dies, do not call me. And even if you do call me and somebody died, it better be something that can wait till Tuesday. Because it's just, I value and I'm hardcore on rest. And that's carried over to our church, carried over to our lead, my students, all of that. Like they know that. And that's how I'm able to maneuver because Mondays for me, man, I mean, I'm binging Netflix. I am reading a book, that has nothing to do with what I'm researching, and all of that. So that's how we do it, man. And I'm a huge advocate for therapists. I attempted suicide in 2014. I was done. I was just so overwhelmed. Life was crazy. Finance at the time got bad because like I wanted to do something for court in terms of like purchasing a ring and I just couldn't afford it. And all these other folk were getting married. And then like church was not well, school wasn't well. It was just a bad season. My dad came to my life and it's a whole nother story, but he left and came back. And I was just like, man, what is the point? I'm in a new place, all of this. And when I got a new lease on life, man, after I didn't have the strength to do it. And when I woke up in this hospital bed, and had to be just stayed in the room for a couple of days, had to go through all these sessions, had to be marked as like all of this stuff. From there, man, I'm like, if I have a new lease on life, I'm going to maximize what I do. And that's where, for me, it honed down to what am I good at? How can I do it well? Stay in therapy, have the right relationships, and rest. And from there, man, it's been groovy. But I had to own I had to value wanting my life. And when I valued my own life, then, it changed my whole perspective on living.
Absolutely. Well, glad to be able to sit in front of you and be able to do this, and then just even to share that story, and just the advocacy for therapy. We actually just talked to a therapist, and one of the things he talked about was like, we don't tell people what to do. We don't give them a checklist of these are the things that you need to do. They're more so of a guide of, identifying or helping you identify what it is that you want. I'm here to support you. I'm here to provide those resources to you to help you get to that point. So, and it's not just a reactive thing. You said that you're still in therapy, even though things are, seemingly pretty good right now. So, it's, we want to take that stigma off, when it comes to that, especially when it comes to our community as well. So, man, the rest is, your body will tell you the things that it needs. So whether it's, you nodding off or just your body shutting down, you definitely got to listen to it. So I'm glad that that rest is really at that top of your priority list. So, this has been great. I really do appreciate your time, Justin. I do want to leave with one more thing. And, for the folks that are listening, Justin and I met at Marquette, way back in 2010.
Don't say that.
Even though actually it was earlier, but,
don't say that.
But we met at Marquette. we're still young in our younger years. And, there was a block on a street called Wells Streets between 16th and 17th. So for folks who, went to Marquette at that time or still going now, you know what I'm talking about. At the time, there were 3 restaurants actually on the same block, on the same side of the street that, all the, hungry students, day and night would go to. So I wanted to know, like, what's your ranking with these 3? So Marquette Euros, right?
Yep.
Real Chili and the Doghouse.
Oh my God. So it was funny. I told my wife, I said, this is the hardest question.
Yeah.
I would say, so me, I don't know what it is, man, but I just really liked Marquette Euros.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was Marquette Euros number 1, Real Chili number 2, Doghouse. But then the thing is, I told my wife like this. I said, I would take like the Euro from Marquette Euros, the chili, like the small chili, and then the fries from Doghouse.
Okay.
I was like, if I had an ultimate Marquette meal. That was funny. I was like, that was the hardest question, but I remember my first Marquette Euros experience, and I was like, this space is legit.
I specifically remember there were just nights when it came to that place, and it wasn't even just like the food; it was the experience. It was being able to see a bunch of people, acting rambunctious. You see some basketball players every now and then. It was a good time. And, I was looking up when I was putting this question together, I was looking up and I saw that place is gone now.
My sister, she just graduated from there and she told me that that's gone. And I couldn't believe it.
So I'm glad that we got those memories. For me, it would be Marquette Euros actually at number 1, the Doghouse at 2, and Real Chili at 3.
I get that.
And if I were to go back now, number 2 and number 3 might be changed because I was never really a big chili person. And I think it was just the customization of the hot dogs at Doghouse. I think that's what kind of got to me. But no, Marquette Euros was always at top, from beginning to end. So I appreciate your input. That was the most important. So again, no, Justin, I appreciate your time. I'm glad that we got a chance to reconnect and everything. Before we wrap up, definitely tell the people where they can reach you. If there's anything that you want to plug, I'm going to let you have the floor for that.
Cool. Yeah. I'm on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and everything at Mr._J Lester. I have a podcast that comes out on Mondays called Made for Mondays, where our goal is to conquer Mondays before Mondays conquer you. And so it's on any of the podcast stores. So please come on there. And it's 8 to 10 minutes every single Monday, just winning your Monday before Monday takes you over. And then our first book came out called Necessary Endings, kind of detailing, you heard bits and pieces of it, but my story from attempting in 2014 to practices I've had since then to where we are now. And so that whole book is about the mindsets that had to die in order for me to live. And so called Necessary Endings. So that's on Amazon. If you just search Necessary Endings by Justin Lester, it comes right up. So it's an honor to be here, man. Glad to connect with you again. And it's an honor for what you guys are doing. And this is great. This is great.
Yeah, no, we definitely appreciate that. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in. We're also all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Definitely check out our website, inquirehigher.com. And if you want to just give us feedback, you want to let us know, what type of career, who you want to listen to, we can definitely try to make that happen. You can reach us at inquirehigher@gmail.com as well. But like I said, until then, peace to you and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.